Good evening. On Thursday, the Trump administration did something that will change American life for decades. Something that affects every car you drive, every breath you take, every power plant in this country. The Environmental Protection Agency revoked the endangerment finding. A 2009 scientific determination that CO2 and 5 other greenhouse gases threaten public health and welfare. And with one signature, EPA Administrator Zeldin eliminated the federal government's legal authority to regulate climate pollution from cars, trucks, power plants, and oil refineries. Trump called it the single largest deregulatory action in American history. Climate scientists call it catastrophic. And tonight, I'm going to explain what this means for you, for your car, your air, your future. If you want coverage that explains how policy changes your actual life, not just political spin, subscribe to Capital Prime. Hit that bell, because this affects everyone. Let's begin. Let me take you back to 2007. The Supreme Court ruled in Massachusetts v. EPA that greenhouse gases are air pollutants under the Clean Air Act. The court said EPA has the authority and the obligation to regulate them. 2 years later, in 2009, the Obama EPA issued the endangerment finding. A scientific determination based on decades of research. Carbon dioxide, methane, and 4 other greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare by warming the planet. That finding became the legal foundation for nearly every climate regulation in America. Tailpipe emissions standards for cars, limits on power plant pollution, methane rules for oil and gas operations. All of it rested on that 2009 finding. For 17 years, courts have upheld it. Every legal challenge failed. The science kept getting stronger. The evidence kept piling up. Heat waves, wildfires, floods, droughts. And then on Thursday, Trump's EPA said, never mind, we were wrong. Greenhouse gases don't endanger anyone. So what does this mean in practice? Cars. All federal emission standards for vehicles are gone. The Biden-era push for electric vehicles, dead. Fuel efficiency requirements, eliminated. EPA Administrator Zeldin said this will save consumers $2,400 per vehicle. Environmental groups say it will cost lives through increased air pollution. Power plants, coal and natural gas plants no longer have to limit CO2 emissions. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum celebrated on Fox Business, CO2 was never a pollutant. This opens up the opportunity for the revival of clean, beautiful American coal. Oil and gas industry, methane regulations, rules limiting leaks of a greenhouse gas 80 times more potent than CO2 are now under threat. Companies may no longer have to measure, compile, or report their greenhouse gas emissions. The White House claims this will save Americans money and boost the economy. Trump said Thursday, this was all a scam, a giant scam. This was a ripoff of the country by Obama and Biden. But here's the catch. The science hasn't changed. Climate change hasn't stopped. The Trump EPA isn't arguing the science is wrong. They're arguing they don't have legal authority to regulate it. Zeldin said the endangerment finding was the holy grail of federal regulatory overreach, that EPA overstepped its authority under the Clean Air Act. Within minutes of Trump's announcement, California Governor Gavin Newsom said California will not stand by. We will sue to challenge this illegal action. He's not alone. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell, New York Attorney General Letitia James, Environmental Defense Fund, Sierra Club, Natural Resources Defense Council. They're all filing lawsuits. The legal argument, the Supreme Court already settled this in 2007. In Massachusetts v. EPA, the court ruled that greenhouse gases are air pollutants, and EPA has authority to regulate them. That hasn't changed. Meredith Hankins, legal director at NRDC, said the 2022 Supreme Court ruling never questioned that EPA had the authority to regulate greenhouse gases. That was settled law. But Trump's EPA is betting on a different Supreme Court. The 2022 West Virginia v. EPA decision limited how broadly EPA can regulate, and the 2024 Loper Bright decision curtailed agency power to interpret ambiguous statutes. Trump's team thinks this Supreme Court, with 6 conservative justices, will side with them. That EPA doesn't have authority unless Congress explicitly grants it. And if they win, no future EPA under any president, will be able to regulate carbon dioxide emissions, ever. Former Biden EPA official Joe Goffman told CNN their definition of winning is to permanently remove EPA's Clean Air Act authority to regulate greenhouse gases. This will be in court for years, maybe a decade, and it will end up at the Supreme Court. On Thursday, the Trump administration revoked the endangerment finding, the 17-year-old scientific determination that greenhouse gases threaten public health. All federal vehicle emission standards are gone. Power plants can emit unlimited CO2. The coal industry is celebrating, and climate scientists are warning of catastrophe. California and 24 states are suing. Environmental groups are filing lawsuits. This will be in court for years. But here's what's not in dispute. The planet is still warming, the ice is still melting, the fires are still burning. And now the federal government has voluntarily given up its most powerful tool to fight it. Subscribe to Capital Prime, because when these lawsuits reach the Supreme Court, we'll be covering every argument. Let me know in the comments. Do you think EPA overstepped its authority, or is Trump handing a climate catastrophe to the next generation? This is Capital Prime. Good night.